I was probably spoiled in my career. Like I probably haven't even been in an office and had a real job. This is what I've done. My parents still ask me when I'm going to get a real job. It cracks me up. I have no idea. You know, it is all about being in places like this is just so great.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to View from the Summit. My name is James, and today we talk with Bridget Legnavsky, CEO of Sugarbowl. She's been in the role for 4 years now, and has a unique insight that not a lot of executives have, since she lives at the resort. She started her career as a skiing coach in New Zealand, and worked her way up through the ranks of several resorts down there, before eventually becoming the Chief Experience Officer at NZ, a tourism firm on the South Island. In this episode, we'll talk about what it takes to lead a mountain resort, how the community shapes her decisions, and where Sugarbowl is headed next. Let's get into it. So let's start with a fairly easy question for you, Bridget. What's your connection to Sugarbowl?
I'm the CEO here at Sugarbowl, and I've been here for 4 years now.
Oh, nice. So pretty deeply ingrained in the community, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not only in that role, but I also live on resort, so kind of here the whole time, 24/7, going through everything with everyone.
Well, there you go. There are worse places to live.
No, it's a great...
So I think let's start back at the beginning, taking back to 16-year-old Bridget, kind of skiing at Dobson, high school in New Zealand. You have any interests or dreams back then that you want to share?
It's so interesting you grab at 16 years old, because it's kind of like, oh, okay, what was I like at 16 years old? So I grew up in a really small town in New Zealand called Lake Tekapo, which is like a tourist town, and grew up in the tourism industry. My father had a business in scenic flying, so ever since I was very young, even before 16, I was working that, and quite intense, like aircraft management, from anything from handling them in the air, not flying myself, but like air traffic control, through to, selling tickets and putting people on planes, and like ever since I was very young. So I was like really involved in, like, I would call it operations and the logistics of operations from a really, really young age. At 16, I was at a boarding school, a high school down in Timaru called Craighead, and every weekend I would jump in my little Nada Neva, which I don't know if anyone even knows what those are, and drive from Timaru up to Dobson where I was skiing. And about 16 was when I started realising I was actually quite good at skiing. And even though the race program was I was winning South Island events, and I was like, oh, this is kind of odd. But it was almost, my family wasn't as into driving me to ski race, and so I did it through school, and then started teaching skiing in my last year of school at Mount Dobson. So I got up each weekend and teach skiing. That's where I started.
And what was that like? That was kind of teaching racing, or just showing local kids around the mountain?
Yeah, because I was, when you start teaching skiing and you're kind of a good skier, you actually skyrocket through the career pathway really quickly. You don't end up having to kind of learn how to ski and learn how to develop, because you can actually teach quite high lessons because you've had your coaching background and skiing background. And so you actually jump a lot of hurdles from what a normal ski instructor career was like. So kind of didn't have to do too much. I mean, yes, we taught beginners, absolutely, but I didn't have years and years and years of teaching first-timers. So yeah, I teach a lot of kids groups, good skiers, and do that over the weekends. And then I think I got my stage one when I was about 18, when I was still at school, or maybe it was the first year out of school, I did my stage one. And back in the day in New Zealand, there were 2 levels, stage 1 and stage 2. And so I did that. When I finished school, I went straight to the Tahoe University to do a degree in physical education. But I was started straight away, like right from my last year of school, doing back-to-back seasons. So after I finished school, I went to Japan, and I did 2 seasons in Japan. But in between was coming back to university. Because in New Zealand, the big holiday, like your summer holiday, is actually the northern winter. So you could go.
That's really nice.
I did 2 seasons teaching in Japan, and then I moved to Breckenridge and spent about 10 years in Colorado, but all the time going backwards and forwards to New Zealand. And I did my phys ed degree, and as soon as I started my phys ed degree, I moved from Dobson to Cardrona, and that was 1993, and that was my first year of Cardrona.
What was it like balancing your degree and all the travel? Was it easier than usual because it was during the summer and so there wasn't a lot of school, or were there still challenges?
Yeah, I probably missed that real intense college experience because I was kind of doing as little as I needed to do to pass the degree. And I passed with B passes and A's, but nothing spectacular. And I would like almost design what I was going to do based around not having a lab on Friday afternoon so I could get to the resort. So because of that, I sort of missed really having that full college life experience. And because my life was actually in skiing, and it was a bit more intense than what I'm saying. So I would be away. And then generally I'd miss the whole first term because I'd stay away and do a whole season overseas. And by the time I got back, I was catching up on first term. So it was good. I got my phys degree with B's and A's and graduated in 4 years. So that was good. But I probably didn't even know why it was so important. I just knew that I had to get a degree.
Yeah.
And I had also started competing. So I was teaching skiing, doing a degree and competing in freeride, which we didn't call it freeride, we called it extreme skiing in those days.
Huh. You'd be shocked how many people felt like they needed to go to school just for a degree. I had Miley on the first episode, and she said a similar thing. She went to business school just because she felt like she needed something to fall back on before she wanted to chase what she actually wanted to do.
Yeah. I think it shows, like, it's good to have one because, you know, I've been back to university twice since. I was able to go back in a postgrad environment. So that was really great. And my postgrad experiences were way better. And I learned, like I was ready to learn and I knew what I wanted to learn. I, you know, did really well in my postgrad world. And you couldn't have gone to the postgrad world without a degree. So I think it was good. The other thing is, I think, teaching yourself how to learn and being able to and stay doing something for 4 years actually indicates quite a lot too. Because if you haven't done that, it's quite hard to be that committed to something.
To be able to sit down and stay with something for a while, even if it's not something you actually really enjoy too much. So, you know, after your degree and you traveled around a bit, you go Breckenridge back. What were you doing during that time?
Yeah, so, well, even during my degree, two of the summers were Japan, and 2 would have been, because it was 4 years, Breckenridge. And then I did 6 years in Breckenridge, and then I ended up in Aspen. But I was teaching ski the whole time and competing in freeride. Not for about 6 or 7 years. So it's hard to break it all down. But in between, I was going back and forth to, I was doing Cardrona in New Zealand. While I was in New Zealand, I was at Cardrona every weekend and holidays. And then as soon as I finished my degree, I actually had planned to go back and do a postgraduate, or a master's, in sports psychology. And then I got offered a role, and this kind of been a little bit of my career, accidental promotions. I got offered a role as, I think it was events manager, straight out of university. So I'd already become fully qualified as a ski instructor, stage 1 and stage 2. And back in those days in New Zealand, very few people were certified at stage 2 level, and I don't think there's about 1 or 2 women certified with stage 2 in New Zealand. So I was sort of at the top of my game by the time I finished university. So I came back and ran events, mainly racing events, just racing events at Cardrona for a couple of years. And then, so I didn't go back and do my master's. And then after that, I got offered training director, and then I got offered ski school director, and then I got snow sports manager, and then I got offered services and invention general manager, but none of it was planned. But every single promotion made me stay at Cardrona. So, I was going to go and do something different, but suddenly it came back.
You'd be shocked how strong of a theme that is to the other interviews as well. Yeah, people create their own luck or they get lucky, but everyone who has succeeded has taken advantage of that. And so they've all kind of pounded the importance of building the skill set needed to take advantage of those opportunities when they come to you. Was there any particular step along in Cardrona that you felt really spoke to you?
I think I was really lucky in the ski industry because I was a really good skier. And it was just, if you're not, it's really hard to get credibility. And so it's almost like I had this huge helping hand to run a ski resort and be a skier because people respected me, not because I knew how to do business, but because I could ski. And then I think the other part of it is I worked really, really hard and had a very strong set of values, which I still do today. So I'd be loyal, I'd work really, really hard, achieve really good results, and that's how you get offered the next step all the time.
Did you start to build a network at Cardrona of people that trusted you around you and people that helped lift you up and keep you through that ladder?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the first part of it was just moving up through, but I definitely think the team that I've got around me, I've always believed in having great people around me will make me better. So I always want better people to meet around me and do it really well because they're going to make the outcome better, which is, it's all we're after is like achieving success. So the team I had at Cardrona was unbelievable, and most of them are still there today. But a lot of them I had developed, picking out your superstars, seeing who's really got the talent and bringing them through was really key to that. And then later, probably the network I had throughout New Zealand. I had my peers at the other ski resorts that I became really close to, in particular, and still am today. I'm great friends with the CEO of NZ Ski, who I worked really closely with, especially through COVID. But more than anything in New Zealand's like a multicultural world. So when you go down to Cardrona and Treble Cone, the whole world's down there in wintertime. The best skiers in the world, they're all training, coaches, separate around it. And so I have a really big network globally because of that.
It's funny, my follow-up question to that is usually, do you have any strong mentors who helped you a lot, kind of just one-on-one, but you had mentioned picking people around you and mentoring that. What was that like from the other side of the perspective, to choose people and to invest time and energy into them?
I don't know why. I seem to have a really good, radar for seeing talent. I can see it's almost like they walk around with halos around their heads or highlighted because you're like, that person's going to make it and that person's going to make it. And it's all in the way they're made. And behaviour is something that you can manage, completely manage. You can choose who you want to be, how you want to be, and show up like that. So it's sort of in your work ethic, much to do with it, and just behaviour. So I've always been pretty good at spotting that. When it comes to mentors for me, I've had some great people around me and I've had some terrible leaders too. And I think the great people have, when you're growing up in any business, what you kind of do is look at the great people and the great stuff and you try and replicate that. And then you look at the stuff you didn't like and you try to go as far in the opposite direction as you can. And actually that molds who you become. And probably a lot of my really staunch values are based on things that have happened to me that I didn't like. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That makes sense. You know, it's easy to learn things from people you really respect and admire, and it's a lot more difficult to learn things from people you don't.
Well, you can, because you can learn not to do that stuff. And then, therefore, what does the opposite look like? And you can head hard in that direction.
Yeah. So you rise up through the kind of ladder at Cardrona. You know, while you're at Cardrona, I saw the employee count explodes massively. It goes from 5 to 70 full time, right? What was that like, being almost at the top of the organization as it's growing so rapidly?
I don't know. I just think that I had a vision for it to be successful. I think if I go to staff and then I go probably more to ski days. I mean, even the ski school was, when I first started at Cardrona, the ski school was kind of Cardrona was nicknamed the Flat White. It was like the boring place, and it's where the shitty instructors ended up. And it was me and this guy called William Boyd, and we were the only two full-suit instructors. By the time I'd finished my tenure at ski school, we were the place to be, and the whole demo team was on the Cardrona Ski School. So that was pretty cool. It went from being the boring place to being the place to be. And that was all about training. What we did actually to get really good instructors is we built instructor training programs. And what it did is gave good instructors great work and good money. And then all of a sudden that changed because people wanted to be a trainer because they got great work and were paid really well. And then all of a sudden everyone wanted to work at Cardrona. So that was a big part of that. And then, of course, we started what was called the HVC, which is now known as the Alpine Race Team and the Free Ski Instructor Team. So having that competitive arm to the resort was huge because suddenly there was work for coaches. And when there's work and when there's good money and there's good work, people will come. And that was really big. So the ski school exploded. But then the resort kind of went mental too, because we were like a family resort. I think when I started this GM, we were doing about 120,000 ski days. By the time I left, we were doing 300,000 ski days. And some people will hate me for that. There's no doubt about it. But it was all about making the place as successful and as profitable.
I saw a really interesting quote somewhere along the lines of, people are going to come, who am I to stop them? And I found that really interesting because that's not a view that a lot of people have towards these small ski towns. Have you applied that kind of anywhere else in your life as well, of not really pulling the ladder back up underneath you, but helping other people try and come with you?
I guess the experiences that I got put in were growth. I was a growth CEO, like I was a growth manager, like to grow business, grow brand, grow business. But I think there's definitely an element of that fit in certain situations. And the only reason I believe in growth is for sustainability and making sure that the place is profitable enough so that it can fix stuff, make stuff better, and actually be really good. I think my mind, once we got to that busyness, and as I was finishing, and we got to that level, we were starting to try and really control it. But my mind had shifted definitely to the development of sport and the love of the sport. And now that we got the business so successful, we were able to put a lot more into the sport. So, for example, building a half pipe is not something normal resorts can do. But if it's profitable enough and it's got enough business, it can, unless the resort is thriving, it's successful, you can't do the cool stuff that doesn't make any money. So it was sort of this mashing of you getting the resort to a point that it actually could deliver on supporting the sport. Because you can't support things if you don't have any money. So it's everything kind of works in parallel to that. And then, of course, moving to Sugar Bowl, it's not a growth game. It's an experience game. It needed a little bit of growth, and it still needs a little bit so that it can self-sustain and do some of the things I'm talking about. But this is much more about an experience build, which Cardrona was too. I mean, Cardrona's got amazing facilities. It was all kind of came part and parcel, but it's kind of certain strategies lead others.
And I think it's interesting with Sugar Bowl too, because the resort is kind of sandwiched in between these two titans in the ski industry, and it's one of the last few independent resorts kind of along the West Coast. So people get upset when you say there needs to be a little bit of growth, but I think it's fair to say that in order for Sugar Bowl to keep the experience and to keep doing all the cool stuff that the resort does, it needs profit to be able to prop up those things.
It needs to be sustainable. And the more you can sort of sit down and have a really rational conversation with someone about that, they get it. Nobody wants people here. Everyone. I don't want anyone here. I want some party all day. But we also have to understand that in order to be sustainable, sustainability is such a big word, but it needs to make some profit so that it can fix stuff.
Yeah.
And support stuff.
So I guess after Cardrona, your general manager, what happens after that?
So I was general manager from about 2012 through to COVID, which was just before COVID. And in that time, we did a couple of really big moves. We purchased the rights facility, so we bought all that land out the back. So we had the capability of doubling the size of the resort. In parallel, I was doing an online MBA, and my last year of my MBA was a project, and my project was to start a master plan. So it's kind of brought me great joy to watch it come to life exactly as I planned it, or we planned it. And we also purchased Treble Cone, which was the other resort in Wanaka. So those were really big things in my tenure up until COVID. Then COVID sort of hit and everything changed for us because we were owned by Z, which is one of New Zealand's biggest tourism companies. Of course, anyone knows what happened there, that tourism went flop because New Zealand shut its borders. So the ski resorts actually did really well. We did great out of COVID. We probably had some of our best years during COVID, not from a stress level, but just being able to deliver on an outdoor experience that people value. And then, of course, after COVID finished, is just re-emerging Cardrona and Treble Cone and running them. It was a huge success because no one ever talks about it. But the fact that no one ever talks about it tells you how successful it was. But they took two completely different cultures, completely different resorts, and somehow seamlessly and smoothly brought them up as one.
Which sounds incredible.
And most people really appreciated it,
I can imagine, because it brings kind of all of the skiing in that area into just one place, and it makes it more accessible for everyone. You have a pass at Cardrona, you can go ski Treble Cone, and connection is really underrated in a lot of places.
I think people there, a lot of people will come up to you and just thank me. It's great. And, the fact that we could do so much for Freeride by doing that, because Freeride was kind of a wee bit like doing its own thing. But we've obviously been super successful in building the facilities for park and pipe, for snowboarding and skiing. And reasonably successful in alpine racing. Cardrona Up was probably doing a better job, but they were focused on that. We were focused on park and pipe. We had a good alpine team, but we were getting Olympic medals out of our park and pipe team. Wow. And then, of course, buying Treble Cone allowed us to sort of extend that to support freeride as well and grow freeride. And you can see the success of New Zealand. When I was young, when I was travelling overseas in those early days, everywhere in the world I would go and I'd say I was from New Zealand, the first comment was, is there snow in New Zealand? And like people just thought about it as a non-skiing tropical nation. And now, well, not even now, but, within about 20, 30 years of that success, nobody questions us that anymore. And it's because we have such great athletes on the global world stage. And New Zealand is known as a ski destination because of what we did with the sport. So in terms of reputation for New Zealand snow sports, it was huge.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was trying to figure out as I was looking into your background was New Zealand is about as far away from the geographical center of the skiing world as you can get. And it was really interesting to see you break out. And obviously now you're in North America, but just be all across the world. And it has now turned into this destination where over the summer you talk to other racers like, are you going to New Zealand this summer? Like, is that where you're going to train? So it's really cool to see it expand out onto this global stage because it's such a beautiful country as well.
And I think that really did happen from athlete success. And athlete success doesn't come without facilities. So we probably stuck our neck out and built the facilities, and then the athletes developed from that. That was pretty cool. A lot of time in China. China's a huge market for New Zealand. And we went up there, and instead of spending money on marketing, we took a different approach. We decided we'd go into China and actually become a brand inside China. So we ran all of our instructor training programs up there. We took our team and our Green Parks team to build parks and teach them how to build parks. And all of that was super exciting. And then we had a Mandarin speaking arm of our ski school down in Cardrona as well. So seeing that success in the Chinese athletes coming through was I feel kind of like we were part of that as well. Yeah.
That's really interesting because that's a move that a lot of other companies completely unrelated to skiing do when they need bigger markets as well. And so it's really cool that can happen through skiing. And it kind of reminds you that at the end of the day, while it is a resort and an experience, it also is a business, and you do need to be able to grow. I guess following up with that, how did you get found for Sugarbowl? Who reached out to you?
Well, I got a message from a woman that worked in Sugarbowl Ski Team Academy called Tanya Pilkington. And she sent me a message because she worked in Monaco with me. And she said, there's a really good job going on in the Northern Hemisphere. Are you interested? And I think I kind of went, not really. Or I don't know, maybe. Or something very casual back to her. But I was pretty settled. At this point, I was just Chief Experience Officer for Red and Z. So what had happened to me is I moved into the corporate office. This is the last year I was down there. I still oversaw Cardrona and Treble Cone operations. And I oversaw the boats and the farms and the other tourism things that we had with Real NZ. But I was finding it very strange because before I moved into that role, I was like the CEO of the ski resort. So I ran everything from HR to marketing, risk, everything. But after COVID, all of that got put into the head office, so what we call centralized, the head office. And then my job was operations, essentially everything. And I actually found it, even though seemed like a promotion, it felt like less responsibility. Sounds really weird. And I was sort of struggling a little bit. So when someone came and said, would you look at this job? I wasn't a deep no, because I was like, yeah, I don't know where I go from here, because this job isn't challenging me like it challenged me to run ski resorts by myself. So when the recruiter reached out to me, I think via Tanya's contact, I started chatting to the recruiter and thought, oh yeah, well, may as well take a quick look. I wasn't really in the market, but it was a very quick decision in the end for me. I chatted to the board, and if anyone knows, when you're a CEO or work with a board, your relationship with them is the most important thing in the world, and your trust in each other and your camaraderie in terms of having success and getting things done. and you can feel it really quickly. And I met with many members of the Sugar Bowl board online, and I was just so impressed with every single one of them. And I think for me, I was 50, I've kind of been doing the same thing for most of my life. I'm just sort of growing up in the same realm. It was like, I could learn so much from these people. And, either I stay set in my pathway but now's the time if I want to make a really big change, like go and try and run a business in another country at a CEO level. It's like, that is a big step. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I came over here, I met them, I met the team, I looked at the resort, totally could see the opportunity here. I loved the idea of this sort of resort and the kind of host it could become for event activity, in particular, and sort of think the Silver Belt's a great example. And I met the board properly, and I just kind of was like, wow, these people are incredible. You've got to find people that you can, at that point in my life, that I could learn from, and I sort of reached the roof of learning where I was, and that's what came. Yeah.
It's a good reason. You'd be surprised. On the back end of the podcast, I've gotten really into kind of the science of being happy and fulfilled in a career, and you'd be shocked how many studies there are on even when people get promotions and bigger salaries, they often feel less fulfilled because of the reasons you had just said. It feels like they have less responsibility. It's less connected to the job that they first started, being separated away from the skiing aspect and then all of the challenging bits that come with running it on your own. People are often less fulfilled by those. And so I think it's really interesting that you were able to see that and recognize that within yourself and decide that you wanted the bigger challenge and you wanted to move.
Yeah, there's way more responsibility on having this independence and having to own it all yourself. Like you have to do everything. You have to be good at everything. Mm. And when you get siloed into one part of it, it's interesting. It's exactly what you're saying.
And especially as CEO, your name is on the resort. It's on everything that comes out. And so, like you were saying, you have to be good at everything. There's no, that's a different part. It's a lot more responsibility, and successful people often thrive on that. They thrive on the pressure to be good at what they do, and they love what they do, so they're good at it.
I need to be able to problem solve and work things out and be in a position that I can actually make a difference. I think when you get caught in that world where you can't do that after you've been doing it, that was a hard thing for me. That was a real challenge. I think as you grow up through it, it's okay, but once you've done that and you've had that challenge, you kind of don't want to have anything less than that.
Same with a lot of people who create their own startups very rarely go back to working in a larger company. They often create startups until one eventually works because it's just two incredibly different environments. And if you find one that you thrive in, it works out really well.
Exactly. But it sort of doesn't surprise me, but
Yeah, there's loads of studies out there, and I think it's difficult to explain to people because it sounds so cliche, be happy in what you do and success will come to you. But I was shocked by the amount of scientific literature out there of just thousands of people interviewed. And, there was this one really cool one that said 7 out of 10 people they interviewed wish they had chosen a different job. Mm. And I don't think I've talked to anyone who on this podcast has said, oh no, I wish I would have done something differently, because everyone here has found something that they love.
Yeah. Definitely when I worked, they had that year in the corporate office, I wasn't skiing very much, and I was on the road and I was away from my family. And actually being able to, skiing is obviously one of my deep loves, but being able to be with my family in the mountains and support them is more important than anything. And the fact that I was probably spoiled in my career. Like I probably haven't even been in an office and had a real job. This is what I've done. My parents still ask me when I'm going to get a real job. It cracks me up. I have no idea. It is all about being in places like this is just so great.
What was the biggest kind of difference, or a few of the differences you felt working in New Zealand, your home country, versus coming here and starting something new?
Yeah, I think New Zealand's interesting because it's like I've said a couple of times, it's like a melting pot of everyone. So it actually felt, even though it's a tiny little country, it felt way more global than here. Like I actually feel quite isolated here. Like the people that work here, and that's what they do. Whereas we're so used to traveling and meeting people and having people to visit that you actually feel a lot more exposure to a lot more of the global world than you actually do here. So I'm kind of trying to force that to happen here. And the wonderful thing about California is it's so accessible that it's actually really, really good. So I'm kind of forcing that on us because that's actually how you get really good, is having all that global exposure. If we all think we're really good at what we do, we'll never become really good. So that's a big thing, and I'm trying to make it happen here. I think in terms of business, it's not really that different. New Zealand is very rule-orientated and transparent, so we follow the rules. And one of the things here that's different for me is people have a lot more freedom, and people kind of like to do what they want to do and will find ways to do what they want to do, whereas New Zealand is and I remember my lecturer when I was doing my MBA, he was German, he gave us this study to show that New Zealand, from a business context, is the most transparent, rule-abiding business country culture in the world. And I was like, oh, I see it now. Like, we just do what we're told. It's kind of interesting.
That's funny. That's not the country that would pop to mind if you asked me who had the most.
Yeah, it's very, very uncorrupt, if that makes sense. Or they just, everything's very fair. Mm-hmm. Very fair, very inclusive. Everybody has the same opportunity. And so because of that, the interesting thing is they're not so good at things like relationship intelligence because they don't need it, because everyone gets a fair shot at it. Mm-hmm. I mean, my husband grew up communist. He calls New Zealand a socialist because of this. He cracks up. He goes, it's more socialist than you've ever seen. But here it's like there's so much about networks and relationship intelligence so that you can get somewhere you want to get to. And that's very different. And then the other thing that I found culturally really different is, and it's really changed me, I thought I was a collaborative person in New Zealand. And now I look back and go, I had no idea. I was like a bulldozer. I would just make a decision and go my way. And I would listen to other people, but I didn't necessarily sway my decision. Whereas here, I learned very quickly that collaboration is king. That's a little bit to do with the relationships and the collaboration. It's like the more you listen to other people's points of view and weave that into your decision-making, the better outcomes you get. And whereas that's really different. And I really, really love it. And I love watching our team here. Maybe it's Sugar Bowl. Maybe we're just in a little bubble here. Our whole team here, our board and our management, just work so well together to get great results. And that's really amazing. And I mean, some of the more obvious things is New Zealand has much stricter rules around employment law and stuff like that. And everyone keeps going to go, California law, it's so strict. I'm like, you got no idea. The employment law in New Zealand and legislation is way, way stricter. The other thing is health and safety cracks me up, because in New Zealand it was actually about trying to make sure people were safe. Here it's much more about making sure that your business is safe. Do you have the right insurance in place? Do you have the right waivers in place? Are you covered? And it's like, I'm trying really hard here to make sure that, yes, we have all that done, but our focus is actually on, really, is that person safe?
Yeah.
And that's really interesting. So risk is actually more about liability legislation than making sure people are safe.
That's a fun distinction. If someone runs into a lift pole, how do I make sure that they're actually flying on the snow versus saying that it's not my fault, I put a pad up?
Yeah. Yeah, and you can't sue people in New Zealand. ACC covers all accidents down in New Zealand. So there's a whole lot of different, very, very government-based stuff that makes that really different.
Yeah, I mean, free healthcare as well. So there's no medical bills that will cripple you if you don't get it from somewhere else.
Yeah.
You were mentioning the networks and relationships kind of needed to work well in this kind of environment. What do those networks look like for you?
Well, we are here at Sugar Bowl, so my networks is really around your business and your business guests, customers, and California is the crux of it. And this blows me away, and I've talked about this a lot around Tahoe. The customers are all from California, and they don't come from anywhere else. Whereas in New Zealand, your customers come from all around the world. So your networks, your sales network, and your trade network, and your B2B network is way bigger. So my network sits deeply in California. The network, in terms of making sure I'm successful, is really with our homeowners, our villagers, and our board, which obviously cross over. But I also have great relationships with the ski industry in America now. I'm on Ski California, and on both Ski California board and the NSAA board. So really deep networks in the ski industry, and that's kind of learning for me because I hadn't had those comrades before, and it's really great. But I also work with Visit California, which is bigger. It works with a lot of people that have got big tourism businesses across California, which is massive. And then I kind of represent the High Sierra, or the northern part of the Sierras where we are. And we work together on how do we get more people coming to California. So that's pretty cool too.
Oh, sweet. I think as we're wrapping up here, what does your day-to-day look like now that you're settled and you've been at Cherryville for a few years, you've got a few pretty big, cool projects going on? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, my day-to-day, obviously we've got a lot of big projects on at the moment. So it's really making sure we land the plane on all of them. And actually my focus right now is keeping an eye on that. Other people are doing that, but I'm just keeping an eye on it because my focus now is on execution of that and execution excellence. We're going to have new gondola, new buildings. They probably aren't going to be quite finished when we get open. So how do we execute excellence on that? Because when people put that much money and resource into things like this, our job is to make sure it works really well, works very, really well. So in terms of working with the team at the moment, that's where our focus is. And my day-to-day is pretty much meetings, one-on-one. I have a lot of people reporting to me, too many, but it's a little bit of the way it is when we run another thing. Something we talk about here at Sugar Bowl is we don't just run a ski resort. We run a homeowners association and club and whatever we want to call the village life. And that's always on 365 days a year. We run a high-end restaurant that will turn into a really big summer business going forward. We also run a tourism attraction, which is the Sugar Rush tubing. And when you look at all those things quite separately, the one thing I'm trying to train the team on is we are not just a ski resort accidentally running these other things. We need to become experts in running a tourist attraction, experts in running a high-end restaurant, and experts in running a village.
Strip each part away from Sugar Bowl, it should stand on its own.
We need, because otherwise, and it's sort of this intentional behaviour that we're trying to do, is like, otherwise we're all good ski resort operations, like kind of accidentally running up businesses. So that's something that we're really focused on at the moment, which I think is really cool. And then apart from that, lots of one-on-one meetings with the people that report to me, just working on their areas, because they all do have different things. And then we have Thursdays like all coming together when everyone works across each other. But yeah, there's just a lot of prep going on at the moment, a lot of leadership projects.
I think let's finish it off with a fun one. You've been here for 4 years now. This is one that I ask everyone, what's your favorite Sugar Bowl memory?
Well, I think it might be May the 5th, 2023. We ran this thing called the Donna Summit, which was like a conference for athletes. And it was super cool, but we opened Disney after everything was closed. And that was probably the only day I've had a real powder day at Sugar Bowl, because it's really hard for me to have that because I can't be seen cutting the line when we're really busy.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be appropriate for me to be out skiing powder when we're really busy. Whereas that day I could, and I got to experience what lots of people get to experience all the time at Sugar Bowl, and just ski, from those right through Nancy's, just run after run of untouched powder, and that was pretty special.
I think that was one of the record years here, which is why you were able to reopen it in May there.
Yeah.
That's pretty special.
It was amazing. I've been taking a picture of my skis afterwards going, May the 5th with you.
I remember all the Donner Summit athletes who attended in my class came back to school after it had happened and were blown away by it. So that's the coolest thing.
4 o'clock on is huge. Yeah, and we got the lift up and yeah.
That day was not so great for me because I sat in algebra while my brother went and skied powder. But trust, you rubbed it in.
Yeah, I'd love to get that Donner Summit actually going properly and forward. Yeah. It was a really great meet.
Everyone I spoke to loved it. All right, well, thank you so much, Bridget. You're busy, so you should.
I can't wait to see what you come out with. It's interesting to hear you say how much similarity there is.
Oh, there's so many themes through. You'd be shocked about the different careers that we've had on so far and the lessons all of them share. So I think that's the main reason I'm doing this. There are things that span across no matter what you want to do that can kind of help ensure that you're happy and successful in what you do.